Yeah. Yeah, so we're doing Lamrim. So I'll put it on the screen.
This one's up here. Maybe it's just after that. Do they do we have to have on the page?
Mandana is included in Lamrim.
It does, yes, that's right.
And Geshe in Geshe.
That's it. So we just go to the market and we take something.
Yeah. All right, all right. So we'll start with Garden Hagema, hundreds of deities of the land of joy. It's going to be on the screen or on your desk, maybe. Sorry? We normally start with straight with that. Is how we've done it. Out of the savior of the 100 deities of the Shita, the king of the clouds, resembling cloud of extremely fire, fresh cream, king of blossom Java, please come here together in your sons. In the sky, falling on the lights round ledges in the like a clear guru smiles with the light. The screen reveals the mirrors for my mind flame. Please provide for 100 years. Let's pray for teacher. Your holy mind understands the full extent of objects to be known. Your holy speech with its excellent explanation is an ear ornament. Your holy body is radiantly beautiful, showing the man. To you who are meaningful to see here and there are prostrate. There's in drinking water, various flowers, fragrant incense, lined, scented waters, and so forth. And mentally emanated, I offer to you the supreme field of air. Whatever non-virtue of body, speech, and mind, especially those opposite to the three powers that I have. You strong with much learning and practice in the regenerate age, measure freedoms and richnesses meaningful. By abandoning the worldly concerns, Savior, we sincerely rejoice in your extensivity. Perfect pure holy gurus from the brilliant clouds of wisdom and compassion in the sky and down. Please let fall the rain of divine consensus in Dharma. May whatever virtue I collected benefit teachings and all friends my great things, and in particular, may it cause the essence of the perfect pure blossom Trapa's teachings to shine forever. By the merits of having offered this mandala to love his two sons, may I, my family member, and all sentient beings be able to meet, practice, and actualize the teachings of the victorious one, Losam Draka, who had the morality of an eminently pure way of life, was courageous in excessive conduct of the sons of the victorious ones, and accomplished the yoga of the two stages of supreme bliss and emptiness. Idam Guru Ramana having the present in this body, and combining into one. White nectar colored milk flows from the opening to white light, cleansing all my sicknesses, spirit harms, negative powers, and obstacles. No influence without expression. My body becomes as pure and as clear as crystal. Page 13, Kanchen ke beds with yen sankapa, lo santra pishnaka sowa. Techen cherezi to make the wambo jambaya, to bomano jambe somewhere. Kanchen Betsugen Songa, Losandra Pishamba Sova, Dashan Chen Rezi, Dreamaking Be Wambo Jambe, and Kumalo Jambe Sawe, Kanchen Betsugen Songa, Losandra Pishamba Sova. Betsash. Satsa Betsash. Sangi Jala Todi Janama, Chanjo Badi Dami Kasi, Nagi Chushigi Betsamaki, Dola Pinche Sangi Dubasho. Sangi Jala Todi Janama, Chanjo Badi Dami Kasi, Nagi Chushigi Betsamaki, Dola Pinche Sangi Dubasho. Sanji Chala Tsogi Chalanga Chancho Badi Dami Kasi Dagi Chushi Gibe Tsogi Dora Sanji Drupa Shu Kanki Tuzini Rumi Tawa Tamche Pambi Chen Kambi Chumi Tuzi Kodun Tela Chanse Good morning everyone. Kazi Sambi the Yangla do got my reshas the Dima any Chubba Yangla Delia any Chubba de Lani Chubba Chitan, Lani Chubba Chili, Lani Yabi Chubba Di, any Dayan Nangan Soba, any he Chubby and Dayan Nangan Soba, Chubba Di, and Lani Yabi Chubbas. Till it covered the Chubba Shea until Lani Yabi Chubbas. And the chick soul was
In looking at Lamrim Kappa's middling presentation of the states of the path of enlightenment, we now looking at the preparation section for the actual meditation session. And in the preparation section, we've been looking at the 7 limbs of worship. Of them, we started to look at the limb of making offerings, arranging offerings. And as such, Lamrim Kappa explained 2 ways of making offerings: surpassable offerings and unsurpassable offerings. So with surpassable offerings, the section that we've covered explained the way of we make offering using objects of the senses, beautiful forms, flowers, scents, and so forth. These are all included within the section of surpassable offerings.
And Chubba come Lamija Chiva and say, Siji Tonma and Sungas.
So in explaining that, Lamrim Kappa is also drawing from Samantabhadra's King of Prayers, the prayer of good conduct. So the beginning of Samantabhadra's King of Prayer consists of the 7 limbs of worship. So we've looked in the previous session of the verses for making surpassable offerings. Beautiful flowers, regal garlands, sweet music, scented oils, parcels, and so forth. These 2 verses cover the way of making surpassable offerings. Then there are unsurpassable offerings, and they are found within this verse, with transcendent offerings, peerless and vast, with profound admiration for all the Buddhas, with strength of conviction in the Bodhisattva way. I offer and bow down to all victorious ones. That verse indicates the way of making unsurpassable offerings.
Ani kept them before, Ani Mawadameva, Ani Tabashatim, he also, Ani kept them before coins, the Konaya,
콩 나도 처벌 부서기 육조 처벌자 아니 콩의 처벌비 라는 처벌비 가르레스 나오니 다 콩기 가신 줘버디 좀 된디 가신 줘버디 아 라는 처벌 자고레스 로
So in looking at the section of making offerings, we make offerings to certain objects. We make offerings to the three objects of refuge, the sources of our refuge, beginning with making offerings to the Buddha, the teacher, the unparalleled guide, who is called like that in the Tibetan language, to Shakyamuni Buddha. That's the first object of making offerings. And when we make unsurpassable offerings involve with practicing in a way that accords with the instructions that the Buddha laid out. So if we practice in accordance with the instructions, that is the making of unsurpassable offerings.
And dirida ta kung kasin jubialaya ta chitangi ramji tasu yon chogros ani kung kalaya ani tang den dang ngedingi ani ka that's what is.
So then when we consider what is involved with practicing in a way that accords with the instructions that we got from the Buddha, there are different levels to that. There is, you can say, the highest level, the middling level, and the list of the way of practicing in a way that accords with the instructions. So to do that, we need then to give a certain consideration to what the Buddha laid out.
Kong Kalaya, Chan Den Dan Yiding Kani Yorinza, Ani Kang Sombadi, Kashi Drew Slawi, Kang Sombadi, Jachi Zingu, Yobaina, Ani Gawachagdas, Ra, Gandachagdas, Ti Go Mevadi, and Siu Shudus. Naya, Ti Go Meva, Yina Kashi Drew Suchi. Yunguyores, the D to Vina, that mid Namjo the Demba, and when the Chinese Sanjum Lea, Lanam mature to use service.
And as we practice in a way that accords with the instructions that the Buddha gave, we keep in mind that the teachings of the Buddha can be taken in two ways. There are teachings that are provisional, this is to say that are interpretive, and teachings that are definitive. If we take all the things that the Buddha taught literally, we will end up in internal contradictions, in finding contradictory instructions, which is indicative that not everything is to be taken literally. There are things that are provisional, which means that are interpretive, and things that are definitive. So developing our own wisdom and approaching the teachings of the Buddha with wisdom, in making a clear distinction, what is literal and what is definitive, and according to that, putting it into practice is the way to offer a practice which accords with the instructions that the Buddha gave, and this is an unsurpassable offering.
Di tulaya gawa yores lana di zawnin mares chomden di tulaya ani gawa menaya chomden di sonsi dujalaya kamda meba soji yowenza di laya ani kamda meba tene tawad tanji kim salaya tiltu lamji temashi bayina ani duja ya tiltu yagi tabni maros ro kon when I answer the Chibari, once Susu come down, never Timbigi, and it's Namguri, Kajit Mashevana, and Magawa Chami, and draw dry Jimudas. Chomde de Dillegors, Chomde de Dujina, Dillegors, Pinza, and it did that Dushi come the never at any, and it took the tap, and it tap came at Ligio and that, and it song Chilia. So
you might wonder, why did the Buddha give some teachings which are provisional and other teachings that are definitive? After all, it's one person. And they need to have made the mind, right? They need to have come down in a certain position. So there's no need to give teachings that are provisional and teachings that are definitive. They can just give teaching. Well, although you might say that seemingly there are contradictions in the teachings that the Buddha gave, still, when you think of some teachings being taken literally or definitive, some teachings being provisional, they were totally depends upon practitioners or followers, disciples of different dispositions, which means that they had different inclinations, different social background, different beliefs, and so forth. So in dependence upon the disposition of the students, those whose minds needs to be tamed, the Buddha gave different sets of teachings. So when you think about it, it makes sense. For example, we can recognize how here we are of different dispositions. We are different to each other. We have different inclinations, different sets of beliefs, and so forth. So we will react to teachings that are given in a different way, according to our particular disposition. And if teachings are always given exactly in the same way, it will happen that some people would be displeased with that and decide to leave. Of course, that happens. So then the Buddha, though having his own intention in his mind, still gave teachings in a way that accords with the disposition of the disciples in order to lead them to the state of liberation and to the state of omniscience. And in order to be able to lead students to the state of liberation and the state of Buddha, the state of omniscience, a variety of techniques and ways needs to be employed. And for that reason, the Buddha gave teachings on things that are definitive and things that are interpretive or provisional.
gomba shisat chik chagores duja thawad thamjin kim bi salaya ani goya di chomden di gomba tha theres ro ne di ani drivsha thela mingni drivshi gi tablam sobo chik tenchin duja rang rang kham de mewal ten chomden di ya thi yoinza duja theba mimbi namgi ani chomden di gi songbi gi ani bigi gi khasata chik ani theba mimbi gi lamdi suji nyamsulane droya thiang ani chomdendi ka suji droba chagores doja theba chimbi rigjingi yang theba chimbi lang labchini ran chinjing lo thor shen chinjing gi samlo di nyamsulane ani sangi salaya drotsu lang labay thiang ani sangi ka suji droba le drogores ra.
And that being the case, you can say that the words of the Buddha, the teacher, are understood in a particular way. And some instructions that are found in scripture say that do not hold on to the words, hold on to the meaning. Rather, don't just hold on to the meaning, hold to it in relation to a certain person who puts them into practice. Which means that at the end, our goal is to be led to the state of liberation and to the state of enlightenment. That's the intention of the Buddha. And there are various paths that lead to the state of liberation and to the state of enlightenment. And those paths are called with practitioners of different capacities, of different dispositions. So for those who are of the disposition of the Hinayana, the Buddha taught the Hinayana path. And to practice that is to practice in a way that accords with the Buddha's instructions. To those of the disposition of the Mahayana, those that are of the disposition of casting aside or ridding ourselves of a self-cherishing attitude and developing an attitude of cherishing others, the Buddha taught the steps of the path of the Mahayana. And putting that into practice is to practice in a way that accords with the instructions of the Buddha, which means that all in all, it depends upon the disposition of the particular disciple, the particular student.
제가 빼노 깨우숨 먼저 람름 시비 거들이야 아니 깨우숨 기 람기 좀 송간자 깨우숨 기 람기 냠냠는 그 바디 빼는 깨우충게 아니 신 디짬래야 차고 많이 봐 아니 깨우치마 온도 하다미 공부터 비체도 아니 된 될이야 미기 주부 수도 송을 소바 아니 직 소수기 나래야 빠비기 직 니버 강여바디 아니 미기 주부 수도 송을 뱀대바 대 아니 좀 내니까 수지 줘봐 아니 좀 내들이야 나는 maybe 쳐봐 두고 그랬어 라 아니야 두자피 다 기본 딩 아니 타비살에 연락되니 아니 기본 딩 람냥스 랭이티 아니 기본 침보 딩자 라라 소수기 아니 네바 칸여가 되는 줘야디 좀 내니 까드 되는 줘야디 아니 나는 maybe 쳐봐 차고 그랬어
Assessing that from the viewpoint of the steps of the path to enlightenment that accord with practitioners of the three scopes, the small scope, the medium scope, and the great scope, beginning with a small scope practitioner, the person is not attached to whatever they can get in this lifetime only. The goal of the person is to secure a high state of rebirth in the next lifetime. And in order to do that, they do whatever they can to their best ability. They take up the practice of ethical discipline that abstains from the 10 non-virtues. And they try to take it to heart, put it to practice in the best possible way, according to their particular ability. And when they do that, that is making unsurpassable offering. This is practicing in a way that accords with the instructions. Then you have the steps of the path that are shared with those of the medium scope. And again, someone that is a medium scope practitioner receive those sets of instructions and to the best ability to put it into practice, and in such that constitutes practicing in a way that accords with the instructions, which is making unsurpassable offerings, offering of practice. And the same, of course, applies to those of the great vehicle. Again, practicing in a way that accords with the instructions is making unsurpassable offerings.
아니 다치 미 드라마도 여반자 아니 메탐제 로기 산기 텐샤비기 아니 피기 케우스음 빌람기 아니 림발야 슈 마퉁에 딘디 다치 가서 다치 소수 감스나면도 아니 치 유소 공시 안 딘티 라 템비기 케우스음 빌람야 슈 마퉁에 임바이나야 지 먼저 미치존나 대바이네야 고 최케만네 단딩 톨이야 드로투야치 드로야치기어스 라 수수수기 아니 케벤 주지니 셴라야 만네바 아이고 단딩글라는 드로니 디야 아니 좀된디 공발이야 파고리 상도스 디야고 아니 소술 되비기 라나미 비쳐발이야 샤나 디기어스 라
So we recognize that we are different to each other. We have all sorts of people in our community, in our society. And not all of us can engage with the teachings that the Buddha gave exactly in the same way. There are people, it is very likely that there are people that are currently incapable of putting into practice the steps of the path of those of the three scopes. And yet, even if they don't do that, if they live in a way that is, you could say, similar to a secular way of living, and they're trying as much as possible to get what they want, to accomplish what they want, but in trying deliberately to abstain from harming others, even that Geshe reckons that attitude of abstention, abstaining from harming others in order to get what one's want, even that is considered to be unsurpassable offering, practicing in a way that accords with the instructions.
제 다칸지 라노미 처벌 droda 마르디 처벌 droda 마르디 제 캬버치 제브도스 라 콜홍디 따지단 콜홍 야고고레 조조디 처벌 표사기 율디 아니 툭 니바 총바이나 라 점된디 툭 니바 총바이나 안디 니삼나 디 처벌라는 메바 레상도스라.
So then when you wonder what is the nature or the essence of unsurpassable offering, it's not about the substance that you offer. It's about whether you make the mind of the object of offering, the person that you offer to, whether you make them become pleased with you. So if they're pleased with whatever you do, with your practice, it means that you're making unsurpassable offering.
디만도 다지 나저 추비 텔이야 대지 아니 좀 된데 공부도 싸우는 팀바지 비 차단 처리다 아니 덴츠 소르지다 아니 지 탑주 소르지 어딘지 간자 제대바이나 아니 좀 된데 공부를 박 말았어 디마법디 강 제바디 아니 라는 메비 처버 파샤니 배시 아니 지 디글레 짱짱 소르지 라 디바사야 소르지 라 좀된디 공부를 마법바이나 좀된디 그 감가도기 아니 투니마긴 조기요 말에 간지 레 준데다 멘팀비기 차와치 아니 차당 모송기 초도라야 조딩이 차당 모송 폐약이 gyulay 조딩이 차와치바이나 좀된디 투 많이 바레스티 디 아니 디 기어 마레스 디 초보 마레스 디 디바레스 디 딘디직 수이 제바이네야 차당 초리다 랑게 셴팽기 상로케네 류 남주 갈땐 데바이나 디 아니 직 최비기 남주 때마이나 팽기요 말이 아니 마데마이나 팽기요 말 디 아니 디바레스 간지 디 치기모다스라.
So if as much as you can, you develop an honest and truthful approach in securing your own benefit, but not at the expense of others. Geshe reckons that that's making offerings that accords with the instructions. After all, when we think of what makes the mind of a Buddha pleased, if we indulge, if we regard ourselves as spiritual practitioners, if we regard ourselves as Dharma practitioners, and yet we still follow our anger and attachment, we still get involved with a sense of competitiveness with others, if we develop adversarial positions and a type of behavior that is prone to involve in conflicts and so forth, even if we call ourselves spiritual practitioners or Dharma practitioners, this is not what makes a mind of a Buddha happy or pleased with us. And therefore, in no way you can regard that to be making offerings to the Buddha. Not only it is not regarded as offering, following our attachment, anger, competitiveness, adversarial attitudes, and so forth, these attitudes are likely to constitute negativities, negative actions. So in no way a Buddha's mind would be pleased with that. So often, not only we do not oppose our anger, attachment, and so forth, we come down on the side of our afflictions and we provide them with a certain support. We support our afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and so forth. So they continue to proliferate, continue to arise, to increase, and so forth. Then if we think of that way of behaving, is that what's going to make a mind of a Buddha happy? Of course, a Buddha would not be happy with us still holding on to afflictive states of mind. They're not virtues, they're negative states of mind. Seeking our own victory, even at the expense of defeating others, is not helpful. It's not a helpful or beneficial attitude.
어디리 딘자 다 가서 다치 간지 아니 추비 수지 추미 제스고 소마 나신기 아니 추비 수지 키체니 아니 추마인 제대바이나 자원이 좀 된디 고모도 무투마 나신기 논주 칼이야 태버친비기 추 키체 앤 밀라시엘이야 태버친비기 추 시체 아니 꿀조디 장된 드리아 찍고래야 장기 케빈 찍고래야 장기 땀다 민다 찍 닝고년다를 소벌 민니 차와트 드대바나 디 아니 좀 되는 거면 튕기어 말했어. 라 이제 디야 아니 디버레스 미기버레스 간지비리야 추지시기어 바냐 장된기 아니 고장 공원딘디킨 대버침비 추 칼라키 대바나 디 좀 되는 거면 통 말했어.
So you might be adopting the guise of someone that is a Dharma practitioner, appearing as if you're a Dharma practitioner, a serious practitioner, and yet in your mind, you'd be behaving in a way that is different to that. You might be appearing like a Mahayana practitioner. You might be teaching the Mahayana Dharma to others, and yet in your mind you would be seeking maybe fame or reputation, gain, honor, and so forth, which means that in a way you will be acting in a way that accords with the Buddha's intention. You might be teaching the Dhamma to others, but still in your mind you would think that I'm doing that for my own sake. And as such, that does not constitute an offering, does not constitute a practice of the Dhamma. It is not something that makes a Buddha's mind be pleased with you.
Kanji namgyurdang kolong niboti songbachik ra dong gi namgyurchikte sem samsuchik shembaji samdevan di gyamde ngoko singdi chagyores di chomde di tungni mares kanji chomde di manzu sangi yemba khelana sangi re dilaya aji yardu keje sheko ya tsawni yo maros the dikhe mana bayne ya jigdem meji yembi on tang bayne ya changbu shuchi ro changbu shuji ras ra tinza matang me chingin dilaya changbu chego ya signi and changbu lamla ya pebding kiu digi and matang me lega chiondi ti tula drog mares tinza di tsawni chigim das ra.
Our appearance and our motivation need to accord with each other. There need not to be a sense of disparity between what we present, the way that we behave, and our motivation. If they do not accord, it means that we are putting up a certain show, and this is not something that makes a Buddha, a Bhagavan, be pleased with us. So from our perspective as Buddhists, we regard the Buddha, the Bhagavan, as being a person of certain qualities. So regardless of how we as Buddhists see the Buddha, you can say that positive, negative, what have you. If you set aside our spiritual or religious consideration of the Buddha and just look at the Buddha from a worldly perspective of someone that was following a path of honesty, someone that was promoting a genuine or an honest approach. If you develop an honest, a sincere approach to your way of living, you become a good person. In no way, if you remain dishonest, not genuine, and so forth, in no way others will consider you to be a reliable person or a good person.
That kinds of nanzu chu chickens lawanza, and chu chibadi chu ranglaya droyachik, ra chu namdalayan drotuach chiguras. Church di and digbal and Guraina and Kyon Nizaros, Nanzu Digwachi, Digbi Lechiagi, Jugen San Nanzula, and Mamadana, Nyongtagio Maros, Tigania Chutia, and Digwachis Guzurich to Kidavana, di Kasota Yogtaris, that is, Tenda Jimmy Chagados Ra.
So there is a danger that we will turn our Dhamma practice to be, before we get to that. So we want as Dhamma practitioners to make sure that whatever we practice to become Dhamma, to become pure Dhamma practice. But there is a danger that as Dhamma practitioners, we will turn whatever we practice not into Dhamma, but into a negative thing. And as such, you can say that we end up in a dangerous situation because first off, we don't want to increase our causes of suffering. We want to decrease them. So turning whatever we practice into a negative practice doesn't really work in terms of reducing our creation of the causes for suffering. But also on top of that, there are also other complications and difficulties that we run into when we turn our Dhamma practice into something that essentially is negative.
Rather, not Kyo Tomamani come there's a D, Deja Shed Demusuinza, T on the Songi, Lunga Yusung, which our Kanchevati, Digbali and Roshagores, Telaya Nanduchi, and in Bedouin Chichili, and Kali Yagoyachi, Sawin Chago Maris, Digbi Lechevalia, Mazum Bedouin Chigoji, Sawin Chago Maros, Tinza Beta Chichi, Mount Vikiamado. And in
after all, we've been under the control of afflictive states of mind, anger, attachment, and the like, since time without beginning and up until now. And we do not need to put an effort in to behave in a negative way. Effort is not needed to behave negatively. There's never too much effort that is needed to behave in a negative way. It is often that we put very little effort and we end up behaving in a negative way.
단도 디간이야 좀된 디가 랍샤 상부디 디버치스의 레사야 간츠 냄비 잡샤바이나 데디 추치암도 아스라 데자 난주 추에 떼스마도 마치네 추즈치 기르면 제토메바이네야 추즈 체가지마도 제토메네야 니마치래야 강 제바디 추 남달란 로야기 베즈 제바나 디 이게 딱센데 깨워치마 상거려야 아니 펜토투야디 딜족도 아스라 좀된디 고모디레도 아스.
So we're so used to behaving in a negative way under the sway of our afflictive states of mind. So in terms of the time that we spend practicing the Dhamma, if we allocate half an hour or an hour daily for Dhamma practice, we do not want to add on top of the things that we do anyway, the negativity of turning a Dhamma practice into something that is negative. So then we want to avoid turning our Dhamma practice into something that is negative. So at least for half an hour or an hour a day, we want as much as we can to try to develop some sense of purity, some sense of positivity in a Dhamma practice.
Can Geshe give an example of turning the Dhamma into negative?
Okay. Can Geshe give an example of turning a Dhamma practice into a negativity or something negative? Chesan, Chucha di dikpala dra di pechik shawainas.
제가 단지 주대야디 지 주비기 주지기 연동도지 칸이 시야디 안 점된디 랍샤도서 시 스템이야 콜론디 아니 랑기 친디기 벤저단 아니 땅다 딩지 드리야 토리야 미니 최시바이나 최대 딩발로 도거스.
Well, that would be involved with, for example, putting up the appearances if you practice the Dhamma, giving a discourse of the Mahayana Dhamma, speaking of the Mahayana Dhamma, but your motivation internally would be in order to profit from that in this life. If you think that if I behave in this way, if I teach it in this way and people are going to like me, they're going to, I'm going to become famous, I'm going to have a better reputation, I'm going to be rewarded financially and so forth, which means that what you put out and what you have inside the motivation are not in agreement. And that would be a negativity. That would be turning Dhamma into a negativity. Yeah, Geshe saw that you're taking it very seriously, so he's wondering.
어디다 간지 딘디지레셔스로 아니 딘자 당한도 라나미 비초바 치고레스 라운디게 라나미 비초바디 아니 통구 슈질이야 찍보를 자샤바나 베나직 단 직된인 디비기 쳐버서야디 베나 다음에 무슨 또 땡인기 아니 강사기 규지 직방도 그 연대리야 찍보 자샤바나 안 간도 제 메뉴로 찾아봤어 로 딘지 마인바 아니 소소수기 엘야 레비 차지 땡 챙이자 레비 차디 란 메비 쳐벌이야 조야 야차 야담바 니선노 요사레스로.
Now Geshe is explaining it in this way because now we're dealing here with making unsurpassable offering, and if our interpretation of unsurpassable offering is too rigid, it is too narrow, it might seem to us to be totally beyond our ability to make such kind of offering. So if you take, for example, unsurpassable offering to be the development of a perceptual realization of selflessness, which occurs later on down the track when you reach a high level of realization. So when you develop high level of realization and you can develop a perceptual realization of selflessness, and you take that to be the only way of making unsurpassable offering, you might be thinking that there's no way whatsoever that I can make such offering. So Geshe reckons that you can also look at more broad way of interpreting unsurpassable offering. So we have positive qualities and negative qualities. Making offerings of our positive qualities, the positive aspects that we do have, Geshe reckons that there is a way of making them become unsurpassable offerings.
데리디즈다 간지 테바침비 추디 아니 룽아 이숨기 자와 칸치바디 아니 쳬레 드야치 안 대한 테바침비 쳬레 드야치 아니 사운다인치 요르와스 딘즈다 간추기 소소수 니발라 빠비 소소수 니발라 빠비기 내가 칸치바디 쳬우 돌바 자와이나 아니 템바 찔레야 팽인치 아니 부양 림고야 팽인치 어딘지 상당고도 하스라.
Which means that it's pretty much about the way that you approach whatever you do. So we act physically, verbally, and mentally. And there's a way of turning our actions of body, speech, and mind into Dhamma practice, even more so into a Mahayana Dhamma. So whatever ability we have to do that, whatever we do can become a Dhamma practice. In a sense that you then regard whatever you do to be of benefit to others and also to have a long-term beneficial effect.
Pena jamgol namu tsunga wachimbo, da lamrim de songi di jamgol namu tsunga wachimbo rewas. Ra jamgol namu tsunga wachimbo pyo gi shajo la ya choni, ane tawalam ni tsushi nanchini, ane ngone channi gi sanji gi temba la ya taktar metu chonga chin zeche, dongha ni ki temba di 베티 니만하신 친 세우진 수니 디기 라월롬니 제사기 때니 아니 조간데 넘버게 링싱이 착답이어레스 로 간데 간데 넘버게 링디 착답이어레스 다디 콩이야 먼저 배우 추진 친구 아니 시낭이 빼놨다지 아니 셴버 숨디 총승버레스 곰버리 카리네 여승버레스 이내야 아니지 마음비기 산기 때문에 미니 믹스기 착답 나와지 딘딘나미도 왔어 대푸냐를 야 상무단 모두지 아니 규급 코랑이야 지 시대바이나 아니 지 돌아 파마보다 가리는 용 쓰고지 가바쟁이 딘디 총요 용 쓰고지로 왔어 디 아니 지 되게 총사라야 마시바 아니 템버질이야 시니 pena kande namba jivini chatamni kanjin dongan nigi tembati ani thosong konsum ani medu chonsa chiki neji ani sölta nayores ro.
So in terms of acting in a way that brings about benefit to migrators, long-term benefit, we can regard it, for example, from the viewpoint of the Great Tsongkhapa, the Tibetan master Great Tsongkhapa, who is the author of the text that we're studying now, the Steps of the Path to Enlightenment. He composed different extents of the Steps of the Path to Enlightenment, the great, the medium, the abridged presentation of the Steps of the Path to Enlightenment. Lama Tsongkhapa, the Great Tsongkhapa, was born in eastern Tibet, took ordination, and became a great master of Sutra and Tantra. He traveled to central Tibet, continued his analysis and investigation of the teachings to the point in which he developed that bright wisdom that was like the sun, capable of illuminating the essential points that the Buddha had in mind, the intention of the Buddha. And he put them in writing, established the Gelugpa tradition. So in Tibetan Buddhism, we say that there are four major traditions. The Gelugpa tradition established by Lama Tsongkhapa was the last one. Three traditions existed before the coming of Lama Tsongkhapa. So Lama Tsongkhapa established in Ganden monasteries as the first, you could say, big monasteries in the Gelugpa traditions. And he established that as a seat for study, reflection, and meditation. Now, rather than just looking at this event as a telling of a certain event from the life story of Lama Tsongkhapa, you can look at it also from an historical and social perspective, in the sense that, of course, as there were already three active spiritual traditions in Tibet, it is likely that if it is likely that when Lama Tsongkhapa was active in Tibet at the time, trying to establish a new tradition is not something that went smoothly, likely, right? There are likely to have been some problems, difficulties, issues, struggles, and so forth. And still, the great Tsongkhapa had in mind the flourishing of the teachings of the Buddha. May they remain for a very long time to come in order to be of benefit to sentient beings. And having that purpose in mind and goal in mind, the great Tsongkhapa was able to work hard to go through the different struggles involved with putting up an institution like Ganden Monastery for study, reflection, and meditation.
Then Pandin Dawa Thabaki, Omanju was song Kabdulaya, and it the Di Mungi, and it Keba Chonga Mambo Shuchi, Garchen, Ra, Jomden Digi, and it Tawa Tenjong Namsati, and it Shinjulot and Dreading in Solaya, me puni Gaba Jabchini, and it Omanju was song Kabdulaya, and Nig Omanju was Shechini. Shenjong Pigi, Jomden de Combat Muntumba, and Jiba inaya, Meba Chava inaya, and Nalaniba Mess, near Sanji Jomden de Combat Chi, and Sanji Temple Chilaya, Goni, Omanjuba Sombanza, Nalaniba Mess Sondes, Tenza Puya Rimpu Tolaya, Temple Chilaya, Pinch, Penangas Niba Youngiji, and Temple Chilaya Pinch, and Sanji Temple Chilla Pinch Tolaya. Samutangwaya, and Kedzi can never never in a ya, and Shella Maneva, Suzu Lega Kanchevati, and Shella Maneva Chegwadi, and Sanjichum de Digita, Sevami Bigi, and Chobason de Gonji Tatubaros, Tishados, Tinza, and the Tindiji Tola and Rotuina, and Nendelea, and Chichinichia, Lavolonia, and to some law. And Sanchom de Gomot too much child was rough, Tindi Tolia, Gunding the song language.
And you can also recognize a similar trait in the life story of the great Indian master, the glorious Chandrakirti, the author of the Madhyamika Avatara, the supplement to the middle way. So at the time in which Chandrakirti composed his famous text, the supplement to the middle way, there were some great Indian scholars that were active in India at that point, and they had opposing views to the view that Chandrakirti explained that accorded with the position of the Buddha, the intention of the Buddha. So the opposition that Chandrakirti faced was quite strong, and yet Chandrakirti was adamant in composing the supplement to the middle way. And he said that it doesn't matter to him if the opposing forces to the views that Chandrakirti presented in his supplement to the middle way are strong opposing forces, opposing views. Still, at the very core of his heart, his mind was set on bringing about benefit to the teachings in general, by and large, to the teachings of the Buddha. It could be that the teachings will completely decline in the future, Chandrakirti said. It is possible that that will come to pass, and yet he says that he will not shy away from expressing his views, his understanding of the intention of the Buddha. And this is what he put together in the supplement to the middle way. Which means that when you consider in your mind the long-term beneficial effect of the teachings of the Buddha in general, there's a way of acting for the sake of others, also in a way that is not violent, non-harmful, which is also in line with the intention of the Buddha. If we cannot benefit others, at the very least, we want to abstain from harming them, which is a notion that we can also take to what we do here at Chenrezig Institute. So we're providing conditions for people to study the Dhamma, to train in the ways of the Dhamma. And our goal in mind is to bring long-term benefit in general to the teachings of the Buddha.
La choba lana mebanes, choba kano shizo ki tsiji chigdi, lana yobane jigdembi choba yimbi, dili chanju samba la soba, tunchen namgi sangutruba wo, 세강 타마니네스 그 당고지 공마 데니 만상을 탐제를 제때 차도 처받는 게 공원다 율때 먹었어.
With that in mind, let's go to Lamrim Kappa's text and look at how it presents unsurpassable offering. So it says, what page is it? It's page 28. So unsurpassable offerings are set forth in a single stanza, whatever offerings. Let's quickly look at that stanza. It's taken from the King of Prayers. I'll put it on Zoom for people that are listening to the teachings at home. So it says, with transcendent offering, peerless and vast, with profound admiration for all the Buddhas, with strength of conviction in the Bodhisattva way, I offer and bow down to all victorious ones. So that is the making of unsurpassable offering. And this is, and in Lamrim Kappa's explanation, he explained these 4 lines. So let's look at the way that he does that. It says, unsurpassable offering, first of all, with the actual offering. Unsurpassable offerings are set forth in a single stanza, whatever offerings. This is a verse that we've just read. Since the surpassable ones are offerings of worldly beings, this here is everything good that is emanated by powerful beings such as bodhisattvas. The motivation for prostrations and offerings says the last 2 lines are to be joined to the previous sets of 2 in order to complete them. They indicate the motivation for the prostrations and offering as well as their objects.
That Digbashavan is Deja Shedan Timu Wangin Sedri, Shisot Siji Chigi, Gu Tubsum the Deni, Shi Lulosovo Sumgi, Ranshingi Dagi Kebati, Ten Rang Mus Chebata, Shingi Chetu Chibata, Shingi Chebala, Yiran was.
Let's look at the next limb within the limbs of worship, which is the confession of negative actions, bad actions. It says the confession of bad actions is set forth in 1 stanza, desire, ... Let's look at that quickly. So it says, where is it? Somewhere. It's here. So every harmful action I've done, or you can say whatever harmful actions I've done with my body, speech, and mind, overwhelmed by attachment, anger, and confusion, all these I openly lay bare before you. So then Lamrim Kappa says with respect to that limb, the confession of bad actions, negative actions, is set forth in this stanza, depending on the cause, the 3 poisons, and by means of the 3 bases, the body and so forth. The nature is that I have done them, that is, I have actually created them, that I've made others create them, and that I've rejoiced in those created by others, all of which is generally subsumed under whatever I've done.
That direction, that Dikpasha Slaundi, and Shargu Dikpang wins in shape, quietly, that Zoji Chawaras, and Shargu Dikpala Karrior Slaundi, and Demo Tata Tusunk. Kanjin Demo Tata Tusulanwana, Kiawahama, Sendi, Sechema, Sumna Tubigi, and Dikpati, and Shargu Dikpati Chawaras.
So this whole section deals with laying down our negative actions. We call that purification, but we want to lay them bare. So what do we lay down? We lay down negative actions down in the past, the one that we do in the present, and the one that will be done in the future. So those that were done in the past, those that were done in previous lives or earlier on, those that we do in this life, and those that will come to pass later on in future lives.
That this shall Slaundi, did Samasoyat Lavoras, that did Samasogos, and her Digbasa Sambatian, and Samasogodos, Tadasa Shimbatian, and Samasun, Patsamchekodos, Mahumba, Sagur Dibatian, Mayoya Toya, and Tom Sam Tension, that Dibat Shakodo, Samasogodos, Ra.
So the word that is used for that in Tibetan is shakpa. Now, often it is translated as confession, but it misses out on many other aspects that are involved with the process of purification of negative actions as expressed by the word shakpa in Tibetan. So it's not only declaring something or confessing something, but it is laying it bare and also cleaning it up. So what do we want to clean, to purify? We want to clean, purify those negative actions that we have done before, those that we're doing at the present, but also we want to also clean our activities so that future negativities will also become purified. There are many questions and doubts that could come up with respect to the process of laying down the negativities and purifying them. To begin with, is it possible? Is it really possible to do that? Now, if you wonder, is it possible to purify negative actions that we have done? Well, what you have to look at is the causes and conditions for giving rise to those negative actions. Is it possible to put a stop to their cause and conditions? Is it possible to clean, to eliminate, to purge the cause and conditions that give rise to negativities?
And good took some of the Digwasagi by now. That's our good took some the any someone soya mena and the Jebu Digba Yoyon Badoj. These are good took some layer. And it took the answer and it Decha Shadansi Jargoyadi, Digwashaga Kalia, Decha Shadans Jargoyadi, and so Direndos, Madame Decha Shadan Koran, the Digba is in a big lady country shagun, the Yurendos.
We use the word negativities or negative actions. Negativities are actions, they are karmas, which are motivated by a certain state of mind. Negativities are created by an afflicted motivation, by anger, attachment, and so forth, which means that, as Lama Tsongkhapa explains that here in this text, they're motivated by the three poisons, anger, attachment, and ignorance. So when you wonder, is it possible to purify negativities, to lay them down, and that needs to be addressed from the perspective of the causes for creating those negative actions, what you need to ask yourself is it possible then to clean, to purify anger, attachment, and so forth? These are the causes and conditions that give rise to negative actions. And this is why when you look again, if you look at the verse that is coming from the King of Prayer, it says, every harmful action I've done with my body, speech, and mind, overwhelmed by attachment, anger, and confusion. So the causes and conditions for creating those negative actions are mentioned in this verse.
Dan deja shetan demusum sedi kares ra angan ming laun da ming khona le tu ding mamu yongra da tuga yamaras da di kares laun di da namgyu nganju gi chetan chi chu cheon di taba da mata ni na la ya chegures ra ani chik la ya gyur ding chik da ani ten de ding chik ni dinan chu diwan za ani mata bi chures ra mata bi chures da mata pala yang 아니 비게 수견다 수미 니여변하니 수미기 수미기 줄이야 되면 뒤에다 10원 니여변하니 아니 12 차스차 those 제지 최고다서 rather
So then when we wonder what are anger, attachment, and ignorance, in what way they operate, what are they, what is the nature of anger, attachment, and ignorance? First off, we need to look at phenomena in general. So when we look at phenomena in general, whatever exists, we can classify or divide whatever exists into two groups. There are permanence and impermanence. Impermanent phenomena are these phenomena that change from moment to moment. They disintegrate from moment to moment. Permanent phenomena are phenomena that do not go, phenomena that do not go the process of change. They stay as they are without changing. Now, the group of impermanent phenomena can be classified into, again, different groups. There are things that are physical and things that are not physical, which means things that have form, things that do not have form, and they still change from moment to moment. So often when we look at impermanent phenomena and look at different ways of classifying them, we speak of impermanent phenomena being forms, consciousnesses, or the third group, non-associated composites. So consciousnesses, for example, are impermanent phenomena, which are not physical. They do not have a form, and yet they change from moment to moment.
Terda the Shiva singindi, Chitangi Shiva singindi, Min Koranaya, Sarix Lagares, Sal Rix Langi, Yul Savi Chajlaya, Yuri Chajlaya, and Chidang Shiva Min Tagores, Shiva singindi, Yuri Chaj.
So we mentioned consciousness, and we're mentioning that in relation to anger, attachment, and ignorance. So as these three are consciousnesses, and if you wonder what is indicated by the word consciousness, well, it indicates that there is a certain phenomenon that has those qualities of mere clarity and cognition.
The Yuri Chadeleya, and Kaso Korangi Tomba Nanshingi Tuanla Yobach Dan and Mentumbaji Ni Yunguyores. Tinza Daja said the Temusum T and the Yuri Shinjilogilea and Shuk Devachik. Lord Dindriji Chagores.
So consciousness has those two aspects, an aspect of clarity and an aspect of cognition. Cognition means that it has a quality of knowledge. Now, with respect to knowing a particular thing, you can be correct, or consciousness can be correct in its knowledge of an object, but also it can have erroneous knowledge. It can have, an erroneous knowledge of phenomena. All right, so knowledge can work correctly or incorrectly. So why are we saying that? Here we're looking at the three poisons: anger, attachment, and ignorance. There are consciousnesses. As consciousnesses, there are mere clarity and cognition. In terms of the cognition part, the knowing, the knowledge is incorrect. There are incorrect cognitions. Anger is incorrect, attachment is incorrect, confusion or ignorance are incorrect cognitions.
Dinza da Yulia Shinjilo shooting any Lodi Yul Tigi Nelu Tondi and Shinjilo shooting Lodi Ranshin garbage Dobrage Chaval Pena Shogodi Cabo Yimbalaya Seven Tomi Lodi Chogoros. These are D and the Kaza di Cabo Tondi and Seven Mainbati Hakoni and seven Tomi Lodi Dobrage. These are Loshinjilo Rikaimba D and Gabding Semameva and Co the Dembang Mebaji Chaguanza and Doya Dos, Sean Dos. These are Chadam Monsum singing D. Nanzugi Tabshichina Segi Yobachik or Dindri Chagdus.
Anger, attachment, and ignorance are regarded as cognitions, consciousnesses that are erroneous, they are incorrect. Now, with consciousnesses that are incorrect, if you develop another consciousness that understands reality in the correct way, the correct insight into reality can eliminate the incorrect cognition of reality. So just to illustrate that, Geshe says that he's using a book and the pages in his book are white. While the pages in the book are white, it is not impossible to have a consciousness in your mind that holds on to the pages in the book as being yellow. They're white, they're not yellow. But it's still possible for a consciousness to exist in a mind that thinks of them or perceives that holds on to those pages as being yellow. So this is an erroneous consciousness. Now, if you develop a consciousness that sees, that realizes that the page is white, the consciousness that sees that the page is white can thereby eliminate the apprehension of the book's pages as yellow. So then going back to anger, attachment, and ignorance, they're erroneous consciousnesses, and as such, they don't have a supportive, valid cognition. Supportive, valid cognitions that can reaffirm the way that incorrect consciousnesses apprehend their objects. Since they don't have the support of valid cognitions, they're not supported by valid cognitions, you can develop opposing consciousnesses that see how things exist in an actual sense and thereby rid yourself of erroneous consciousnesses such as anger, attachment, and ignorance.
The dinza the you took some the shion digi the Nanzuta Namju 7 Angelos and the 7 Koran and the Peme Chawandi tell a tembigi and it pig the Shindon Kiela Soba and Dele tembigi and the Shindon Kiela Soba. Sama Gardre Chagoras Ra but Tindichi Soundango was resta.
So while we're talking about that, we're looking at the section of laying down negative actions. And here in the verse that is taken from the King of Prayer and also in Lamrim Kappa's explanation, he says that together with the causes of negative actions, anger, attachment, and ignorance, if you eliminate the causes, if you put a stop to the causes, the result will also cease to exist. It's like if you look at it in the following way, you might have a seed in your, at the palm of your hand. But if you eliminate the potential of the seed to produce its effect, a tree will not grow from that seed. A flower, a plant will not grow from that seed. So when we then think of the confession or purification of negative actions, we look at that from the perspective of the causes of negativities, anger, attachment, and ignorance. If we put a stop to them, the results will not arise.
That the Dejasedan Temusum and the Tava Chevalaya, the Tobji and the Tobji Pigi Le Digbasasha Jogi, and Digbadi, touching Taba the Masona, Nanzu Sam to Tum Nishasa Girochik. Ra Tabadi, Nanzu Sam to Tum Nishasa Gidi, and Niana Sama Masona, and Sam Digi. And you Munism Tonchini, and it Dejasedan Temusum Tasedi, Kabuchagoyanza, and it Chabadi Nilia, not Dejasedan Temusum Togi, and it Shabi Chabadi, Zamasogundos, Dinza, and it Nanzun Geshe di Tig Chabi Sedoti, and it Nilia Tabachevalia, and it Harchevatelia, Gyobatang, Chinji Chevatelia, and Domsum. And mang the temper tig chakbot the mazun di tagios ra.
Negative actions are caused by anger, attachment, and ignorance. So to put a stop to negative actions, we want to put a stop to anger, attachment, and ignorance. So what's happening at the moment? The mind is like this thing that is completely enveloped or wrapped in anger, attachment, and ignorance. And as such, you can say that those anger, attachment, and ignorance leave those stains upon the mind. In order to be able to remove that veil of anger, attachment, and ignorance, we first of all need to create some space. We need to create some clarity or to do some cleaning up in order to be able to remove anger, attachment, and ignorance. So the cleaning up of stains, that is a preliminary stage for the removal of anger, attachment, and ignorance, is done through practice of purification. And within the practice of purification, we develop 4 opponent powers. For example, we recognize faults as being faults. We develop regret for negative actions that we have done before. We lay them down. And also we develop a sense of restraint, thinking that in the future, I should not do that again. So this process of purification or practice of purification that consists of the application of 4 powers is what we use in order to clean things around, in order to be able to create that space to put a stop to anger, attachment, and ignorance.
단지 쇼가나 신경 아주 샘기직 작업 투고 디바직 세마드나 아니 샘드 추되니 아니 내가 지야로도 연구해봐 인자 디 콘이야 다 디바샤세 아니 그나 안 사장세 그러 디바샤세디 연구도스 디바샤야 디 아니 교섬대한 소치 안 디냠드다 아니 소사 주바장스라운디 소사에다 쳐버려야 돼. 상도 소사에는 누구다스라 딘지 또기 아니 작바디 매버스 다 작바 매버 차사디 벤다 잘라 칸드지마이나 벤 세드지마이나 세디기 아니 잘라 샴바지 소건 담보 세드 짱만 소고다스 다 짱만 소사지라 아니 가르 소제도지 아니 샘디 이 디바타자디 샘디 가을 때바이나야 무유네순 통투게지 어디디 차고서레스
The foundation, the basis for our afflictive states of mind, the basis for anger, attachment, and so forth is ignorance. And in order to rid ourselves of the foundation of all negative actions that arise, we need to develop an insight into reality. Wisdom that realizes emptiness or selflessness, that will be the thing that will eliminate ignorance, the very foundation of all our afflictive states of mind. But in order to develop an insight into reality, into selflessness, we first of all need to do some cleaning around. If we don't do some cleaning initially to cleanse the mind to a certain degree, the wisdom of emptiness will not be able to arise in our mind. So in order to do, first of all, some initial cleaning, we use practices for accumulation and purification. We do practices of purification using the 4 powers of the antidote. We develop a sense of regret for negative actions done before. We develop the power of restraint, committed not to do that action henceforth in the future. All these practices of purification and accumulations are those practices that are aiming at creating some cleanliness, purifying some aspects of the mind in order to make room for the development of wisdom of emptiness. The wisdom of emptiness will be the thing that will be able to eliminate our afflictive states of mind. But so long as a mind is covered by the veils of all the other things, we will not be able to give rise to that wisdom. For that end, we engage with accumulation and purification to begin with.
Dinza pena renganzu semdi chik zama sumaduna nguyunizu tontugiyo mare ani changden che tugiyo mare changden che matuwana ani chik ranjinzing tor shenjinzing se di gyunsen kyuni megyochi tongro he chagwaros dinza semdi zama soda masoti digba tada matalaya rale deba chik ra digba tada sewe jelaya tini ta shigni gochuge chagdos dinza 먼저 할 슬라운디 개업은 슬라운디 다 통만 매버는 총대가지 제가자 다 디르야 먼저 아니 디번 디체단 데 마치세지 싸우니니 다 랍토에 매버디 맞을 치 될야 상담이나로 아니 벤 첸디 다지 메세 강자 많이 봐 니마치기 돌아 상담하는 건 상대야 망치야디 아니 차당 로동원도 주니 디 샤원도 주지니 아니 첸드나야 참 차와치대 차가도스 근데 끼어 터마면 다 딘디 총대면서 다 잡아도 무슨 똑부시 차던서 다 디치 싸마마서 싸우니 드림도 삼비기 아니 싸움로지 코르투가나 아니 겨바칭이 레고레스 다 베사스 단다버든가 아니 몸비왕 당이 싸우니 야고 총도 삼비 겨바지여바나 겨바티 피 디그바티 트리아기 아니 수업담아서 디차고레스 들어 디차고도 왔어
So without doing some cleaning up initially, we'll not be able to see reality. In order to be able to see reality, and in the process of cleaning up, we also have to develop a sense of honesty and truthfulness. Without being honest, genuine, truthful, and so forth, the process of cleaning up will not occur, and thereby will not be able to see reality clearly. So in order to be able to do that, we lay our negativities down, we lay them bare. And when we lay them down, when we lay them bare, we recognize that we have been around since somewhat that beginning up until now. And we have done so many negative actions. We have been doing so many negative actions up until now. Can we honestly say that I have done this action, but I've never done that action? Keeping in mind that we have been around since down with that beginning and up until now, and we've already done countless actions, we cannot, in no way we can say that we've never acted in that negative way before. And that being the case, when we also think of the different things that we do in this life and how easy it is for us to engage in negative action, it seems that we kind of, everything is ready for us to act negatively. We come to see that there is a lot of work for us to be done, in a sense that our mind is covered by the thick layer of stain, by that thick cover of stains, and this is what we need to purify. So we develop a sense of regret for negative actions that we have done up until now. And we think that, alas, because of negative actions, things have not worked well for me. But what I need to do now is to change the course of things, beginning with a process of laying down those negative actions.
내 랑금무스 제바당 신체도 주바당 신지 제발의 예랑 다통지 찌르디바는 진치바 셔바데 대다기 님이 캔에 한말은 교진 치만은 담비 셈기 흰 타반의 샤나 마치 폐와 체지 치만은 초체도
Let's read again through Lamrim Kappa's explanation of confession of negative actions. The confession of bad actions is set forth in one stanza, desire and so forth, the one that we read through. Depending on the cause, the three poisons, by means of the three bases, the body, speech, and so forth, the nature is that I have done them, that is, I've actually created them, that I've made others create them, and that I have rejoiced in those created by others. All of which is generally subsumed under whatever I have done in that verse from the King of Prayer. If through recollecting the faults you regret those done previously and sincerely confess them with a mind of restraining them in the future, you stop the increase of deeds done earlier and stop committing them in the future.
단 나마 깨원 하말이야 딕바사샤와 디기 먼저 다디기 셈이야 가른네여를 세로치라 딘지 도바섬지 로니 엔디톨이야 케지테 세원 데스틱 코라리야 펜도메로 섬섬 진행한다 지마 슈조라스 디테 샤워스라.
It says that we need to leave the text here for now, but Geshe wanted to just come up with a question. Leave it for you guys to think about, because it is possible that we will have such doubt. So you might be thinking, I've done negative actions in the past, in past lifetimes. How do they harm my mind in this lifetime? what is the effect of negative actions done before that affect my mind in this life? So this is a question that Geshe will leave open. We will meet again next week and we might discuss this question in the future.
Thank you. Yeah.
Back to the unsuppressed offering.
Mm-hmm.
Because Geshe explained that when the Buddha's teaching, there are definite and provisional teaching, and it depends on the student. And the purpose of Buddha teaching is for liberation or for enlightenment. And that's in the point of, as a teacher, to see the student where they are. And it seems like there's no difference of preference of higher capacity or lower capacity. But when we learn about Lamrim or when we come to Tibetan Buddhist, it's Mahayana. So it seems to me it's promoting towards a high capacity.
Yeah.
And so as a student, do I need to know am I what capacity, or the teacher know and so he can guide me, or what's the meaning of knowing this reading school?
So it seems like kind of what you're saying is that kind of, the teacher is giving teachings according to dispositions of, or should be giving teachings according to the dispositions of different disciples. But when teachings are given in this format, they're given to everyone, So they give Lamrim teachings on the three scopes, the small, the medium, and the great, are given to everyone without kind of saying that these teachings are for you, kind of you of great capacity, or these teachings are for you, someone of other capacity. So is it for us individually to know which capacity are we and then put it into practice? Is that your question? 그런데 런네메비 추버카블라 창에 돌아 계셨대 시행바 아니 따디라 칸탐 메발라 때네 라메 야마나 갱갱기 추셰 고그레스데 치 소임바 이네 난규응아서 추zo 야마 초바 다민다네 추슈와 이나라와 라메 미만나 추시기라와 이네 람랭기 순추된데 나와이나 아니 기부 숨기 랑게림바 미참ala 시기라와 진짜 라마디 기부 침보레 셴바리 기부 춘춘레 야마마 체네 미참ala 든지 추시기라와 진짜 칸탐 메발라 때네 추셰 레세아디 랑겐디 로마기 랭겐베 나 기부 침보인스 기부 춘춘인스 디 칸데치나스
Tires tadi ngi chomden digi pi duji kamda rimbala teni chö song yores chomden digi chö te song yores tangi zu dila ores ra ta deni chetangi ta chi pi gegin sendi jin baina lama sendi jin baina duji kamda mebala teni chö song tu gogores ta ngada jigi duji samlo namaya kaya Karishagi yeme missing injiki duji come the level then the church said the couple pairs.
Well, to begin with, Geshe says that the Buddha gave teachings in that way, right? So we don't look at lamas at the moment. We begin with the Buddha. So the Buddha gave teachings in a way that accords with the different dispositions of different disciples. Then those teachings were transmitted on to others. Now you have lamas that give teachings to others. If you're a lama that has all the defining characteristics of a fully qualified spiritual teacher, it means that you also have the ability to know the mentality of a certain disciple and to give them teachings that accord with their dispositions. And Geshe says that he personally doesn't have that ability, in a sense that, in giving teachings, knowing that this particular disciple has this particular disposition and therefore this is what I should teach them, he doesn't have that clear ability yet.
Chomdindi kengores, tara duji ni kerang karsam yabati chomdindi gacha gatamba chomdindi ta chi ni manzu zambilin tiene pevni lo ni don trugyasa jidrosa da yin tata kengores ta manzu samno ya karyabati tata kengores timchi chi thoni ani doja susulia chud ten two horas the yene yang anzutan dindijlia ani ridiculous
A Buddha Bhagavan has that knowledge. Although when we speak of the Buddha, the Bhagavan, we often speak of Buddha Shakyamuni, who lived 2,600 years ago. And the Buddha, 2,600 years ago, gave teachings to those of different dispositions. Still, this knowledge of the disposition is still current, which means that the Buddha knew before, and also the Buddha knows now what is, for example, your particular disposition.
Then dindijlia soya di 가서 다지 먼저야 랑왕 토니 소교로지 차금도 왔어. 그라 미지기 꼬리고라야 대고디 삼발라 미지기 꼬리고라야 대고디 삼발라 아니 샤원답든 신다 셰고로 왔어. 인자 아니 카우드라야 간자디기 가른 되고도 인 제가 가르 연구도 아니 pen 텔라테니야 먼저 깨지시야 그거 pen 왔어.
And then we have also to look at the situation that we have here in this environment, not only here at the center, but also in teachings that are given in this format. So when teachings are given in such Buddhist centers, then normally there's the spiritual program coordinator, director, or what have you, then someone is asked to be given teaching. So teachings are constructed or developed in such a way, which means that the person that is giving the teachings, the Lama, doesn't really have complete freedom and independence to teach in a separate way to each and every individual. Sometimes in those teachings, then you have questions that come from the audience, which indicate where the person that asked the question is. You know, where are they? You can meet the Lama or the teacher can meet them at where they are and give them an answer that is relevant to the speaker, the one that is asking the question. But the opportunity to do that is not great, right? We don't have many great opportunities for such situations.
nge samna pe nyunyu kasna chö shenge nguni na ya chö shesa gi lomaliya khachu siki tsewa da saksam yeme dia nganzu pogma tuba nyengin gi lome nguni na ya chö nyesa gi lama isenanda chö tengin tele ya an teba tangna khachu yeme dia charma toba tinji ji tole ya nganzu chö nyeshi chigo de zambala So
often teachings such as this are given to a group. Now, when teachings are given specifically to a person of certain disposition, then when you look at that scenario that is created, from the point of view of the teacher, the one who explains, it's hard to really assess the degree in which they're motivated by a genuine wish to be of benefit to others, that genuine sense of concern. From the point of view of the person that is receiving the explanation, it's hard to assess how much faith and trust they have in the speaker. So you can say that there is a context in which teachings are given in the open to a group of people. And when they are given to an individual, it's much harder than to assess the qualities or qualification coming from both sides, the teacher and also the student.
The Inaya and Chitu Kang Yobadi, Kono Sambanam Kitcheni, and it's Pemba Chona Sami, has some number Sheshavina, Dig any Pemba Mato, patient young Maris, the Dindich, the Penasoso Gettojina, the Kono Dindich, Rangi Chu Samsongi, and the sound of the time penunions, Kansina, Chu Shenge Suzungi. And Lamrim Siniti, Sangiyo Marilla, and she sang Munia, Tevatana Kazu Shatu, and Hamakudi, which should Namda Shivi Samsongi, Colonding Tetum Kigmes. In here, you can share a deep Lama Givishin in Senti, Lea Tony, Loma Jansha, Chaguyanza, 딩이 뭐 삼만원다 지시잖아. 펜서질 펜쪽으로 삼니 이 슈기스로.
Having said that, if you're teaching the Dharma, if you think, may I be able to be of benefit to others? If you have that altruistic intention, Geshe feels that if you're not going to be able to benefit that person, at least you're not going to harm them. And Geshe feels that if you do have that genuine altruistic intention, it will be of help. So Geshe says that here in the time that he's been living here, it hasn't had that thought, I will teach the Dharma to that person. I am a Dharma teacher, this is what he will do. In that he doesn't think that he has all the qualities, the defining characteristics of a fully qualified spiritual teacher, but also it's hard to assess the degree of faith or pure perception that a student might have. But still, Geshe says that in being the student of his own teacher and having had the great opportunity to receive teachings due to the kindness of his teacher, he's totally committed to sharing those teachings with others and to help others as much as he can with those teachings.
More questions?
Yeah, Puna.
Quick question, which is probably similar to what Geshe already said, and I had it written, so I just want a quick answer.
Okay.
When we talk about causes and conditions, so we are working on our causes, not to get angry, not to have attachment, but we can't change the conditions, right? So the conditions we have right now, which is probably because of the causes of my past, that I've created those conditions. But how do you handle those conditions now? Is it just accepting them and then making sure that you don't have to create those causes so those conditions continue, right? That's my sort of understanding.
죄송한데 그런 게 규탄 캔라테는 용기를 직선 봐. 죄송 규세 디라 그런 가르침 번난시 최당 차바 되셔 디라서 받는데 규 용기를 와. 아니 같은 냠낸 체들이 칸트도 카톱 책이어레스. 카톱 책이어라 와. 근데 캔세디 캔 mambo치디 되는 같은 규와 tanto 말레스. 캔 다가는 요레스. 같은 규든데 요레스. 최당 차바디라서 규 요탄 요레 아니 캔든데 규와탄 그것이 두개 말해서 죄송한데 캔 gywa matav gywa tam matube kapsula yan wala di daran kellen gyutso de la mikpachene tende gyutap chigireves ani kendi kema ngamala le sabala tene kende de yongres momba de gyudi gywa tan de kengi kenden do chigi mare samlo de tango gerves
디 간다시나 던데 캬랑기 gywa tang tu yona keche슈티 칼레카슈티 gyotang 투여나 칼레충아디 ke충아디 지다지는 gyotang 투 공연로 차고라서 이내야 당 안주 직 충자 질이야 베나 치 디기 쳇 디기 또그탐성 쳇 즉 벤저사야리 소줄이야 민자 요야 더소베 kechi 쇼지 젠데디 잠발라 켄 투소레스 로 gyur chadam mosum kya thomum me yadabati gyures ken tuzores ta tutsu oni chena gyotang tu gongen rochik phugyang rimbul ya ani phendo mebati rigbi lam jutu gore ken tutsu gyotang tu gongen ro chagors ni kyan kolendang ga khandar chagon ni hamasas.
So in asking that question, Geshe says that he has his way of understanding what cause and conditions are. It's not true that this is your way of understanding what cause and conditions are. So he's expanding it in a way that he sees cause and conditions. So you mentioned those causes, anger, attachment, and so forth. And then you have conditions. So causes are the primary ones. Conditions are secondary. So then if you can change the causes, which implies a much greater difficulty, right? It's much harder to change the causes. It goes to say that you'll also be able to change things that are more simple, the conditions. Geshe says that if causes are much harder to change, why would you not be able to change conditions which should be more simple? So in your question, you made the assumption that the causes can be changed, yet with those conditions, sense that it's impossible to change them. They just stay as they are, which Geshe wants to question that. But then, in understanding what those conditions are, Geshe says that in his mind, when he thinks of cause and conditions, that can be changed, causes are the ones that you've mentioned. So anger, attachment, and so forth. And hey, high five. All right.
Sorry.
And the conditions are conditions such as, for example, attachment that we have to the affairs in this life. If you have a condition such as your primary concern is reputation, money, and so forth, those conditions can be changed if you change the causes of anger, attachment, and so forth. So Geshe says that, having said that, this is his way of looking at causes and conditions, but it's not true that this is what you mean when you speak about causes and conditions.
So if I work on my causes, the conditions to change. That's what Geshe was.
Yeah.
Rinpoche mate wana kirgirchi yevan nyamba me vayang gome tondu tewa sho nyujoda lama sangi rujene rohachi kamalupa he salam goba rawe kowe shinkanzi bendan dewa malu juwe Chere sewa tenzin gyatso Chere siddhiwa tengyuruchi Je sungdun chukbe lam Cheche sanze kanchen tengyur Chana pemo tenzin gyatso Sowan tepso chendun rusho Changchin jangan jame Tenzi jame we kunso lopote Shosun kowe lemon rugyo Pahanda sotu shin konto shakten sho
Hey, Damchu. Chucky. Hello.
Hello. I sent you a text and
All right.
okay.
Cool. Yeah, my phone is switched. It's on flight mode. So there it is. It's weird.
Magic.
Okay. Cool.
That's all. Was it just
For Geshe Tsultrim. Okay. So it's 11:20
Oh, that's 11:20.
a.m. Cool. All right.
Yeah, if you